So what we're going to talk about this morning is I got to move it to the right way. We're going to explore lesson 2 of our Stoic Handbook. Did everybody do their homework? That's what I thought.
I did, Mrs. Yukowski. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's Ms. Yukowski, not Mrs. Yukowski.
We got highlights and everything.
Highlights and everything, man. All right, so week 2, week 1.
Teacher's pet.
So week 1 was our very first introduction to Stoicism and one of the fundamental elements or tenets, which is the dichotomy of control. And week 2 really took that further beyond just the simple identification of what is under your complete control or not, and built upon it and was talking about the idea of aversion and misfortune and suffering. And really what it talked about was that, a lot of times suffering simply just comes from the disconnect between what we want to have happen and what actually ends up happening. A lot of it is the shoulds. We've talked about that a lot in the past. Like you can should all over yourselves. They should act this way. This should have this kind of outcome. If I do this, this should happen. And the reality is that is the wrong path to go down, according to the Stoics. Basically, they say aversion is a desire to avoid misfortune. So stop wanting things that you can't control. Really, Epictetus, this is the quote that they pull from, but Epictetus talks about, remove all aversions, all the things that you consider a misfortune, remove them from things that you can't control and develop a desire for what you can control or what you can achieve. I thought a great example here, which is such a simplistic example, but it's a good reminder and check-in, is wanting a promotion. So we put all of our energy and our emotional desire towards the promotion. But the reality is that we can't control whether we get the promotion or not. There could be monetary constraints, there could be political constraints, all these different factors that might come into play, or there may just simply be someone that is more qualified than us. So rather than focusing and then feeling disappointed if we don't get the promotion, the thought is shift your focus and your desire on putting forward your best effort. Do everything that you can that's within your control to get the promotion. And then if you do get it, great. But if you don't, you're still not disappointed because what you focused on was your effort, what you put into it, making sure that you put your best effort, you gave your best to set yourself in a position to influence the possibility of getting the promotion. It also thinks about in the business world with sales. We focus so much on hitting a sales goal or closing a deal. Like that is the metric. That's the goal that we are going to measure. That's what we aim for. And when it doesn't happen, I think we've all been there in some way, shape, or form. We feel dejected. We feel, we have a misfortune. We feel disappointed. We're frustrated. This should have happened. Why didn't it happen? And there's so many reasons why. You can't control the purchasing power or behavior of others. So focus on what you can. And then that way, again, you'll always desire what you can get or what you can control. So I loved that. I think it was a great reminder. And I love the idea of the job as a good example of that, or the promotion as a good example of that. You can control what you do and how you show up. You can't control the outcome itself.
See, I took it as I have an aversion to other people's reactions. So my notes were, I can't control that, but I've tried to, right? I've tried to be the nice guy all the time so that there were no adverse reactions to things that I said or did. So that was kind of a wake-up call for me in that personal sense, in that, okay, what can I control? I can control how I communicate, what I say, when I say it, what my tone of voice is. So as long as I'm doing that to the best of my ability, that's what I should be focused on. If I have to have a tough conversation with someone, what is the most effective way I can do that? Am I planning enough ahead of time to deliver or have this tough conversation, am I taking the time before having the conversation to make sure I can do it in the best way possible, regardless of how the other person reacts?
So your aversion was like, I don't want to upset the apple cart, in a sense, which
Correct.
is ironic given your job.
I don't want to make people feel bad. I don't want people to be bad at me for something I said, which is crazy because I work in the opinion business and I'm offering opinions, and we all know how we are with opinions. Some people love your opinion, other people completely hate your opinion and then react to your opinion, whether it's factually based or not, doesn't necessarily matter. So this was a nice lesson for me to be able to kind of refocus again as the MC here at Painted Porch Strategies, to reinforce the planning, the prep, which will be in my course, by the way. So make sure you check that out. Planning is massive in how you approach things. And in this lesson too, it's focused on what you can control. In this case, what I can say, what I don't have to say, to be able to avoid, well, this person's going to react this way if I say this. This was, I'm like, okay.
Can't please everybody.
Exactly.
No. Well, mine from week 1 had to do with, I was trying to get a section of my filming done. And I had kind of like a preconceived idea of where I wanted to do it, how I wanted it to go down. And when I set up to do it, it felt like everything was going wrong. Like everything that I wanted to go a certain way was going wrong. So the first thing that happened was that the sun was in the wrong spot based of where I wanted to be standing. And then there was all this noise outside. Everybody was mowing their lawn. My neighbor was out screaming in his yard like he does. And everything was just going wrong. And I had that moment that the Stoics tell us about, like, why is this happening to me? Like, I need to get this done. I'm ready. I've got my microphone on. I've got my stuff set up. Like, this shouldn't happen, right? The shoulds came out. Yeah. And I really had to step back and say, like, okay, this has nothing to do with anything that I did. This is not like cosmic karma. This is just circumstance. And actually, one thing I always go back to whenever I get in that place of like why is this happening to me? When I feel like a victim of my circumstance is, I was very lucky in 7th and 8th grade. I had a teacher by the name of Mrs. Levine. And she was amazing because she taught us the life lesson of how could you have made another choice? I think it would get set off by somebody saying, oh, well, I couldn't do my homework because blah. And they'd give an excuse, right? Well, she would literally like make you say, like, what are other choices that you could have made to have a different outcome? So even though like my 7th and 8th grade years were a long time ago, I still think about her and her like talking us through, like, you can make a different choice. You may not like those other choices, but you can make another choice. So I kind of heard her voice. I kind of calmed myself back down. I said, okay, so let's divide and conquer. Like, let's get an umbrella out for the sun. Let's, figure out another way to still achieve the goal, which was to get my filming done. And I was able to work through those obstacles.
I love that. Look at that. She was
real world example.
She was feeding you those life lessons early. That's wonderful. What a great teacher.
Yeah, it was. At the time, she was one of those teachers that like bugged you because she was so spot on.
You're like, you know me.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you're like in your early teens, like, well, I think for anybody, like that kind of bites when somebody says something that's so true and you get called out on your stuff and you're just like, wow, okay.
Right. And, kudos to her as well. I'm sure she wasn't a new teacher. If she was, still, because over time you can kind of just become desensitized to it. And you could just become one of those teachers. It's like, fine. You know what?
Sure.
I've literally heard them all, but fine. As opposed to really turning it around and being like, well, your dog did eat your homework, but what could you have done to prevent your dog from eating your homework? Don't put it where the dog can get it or whatever, right? Yeah.
So I'm curious, because I think that's right. How are we going to apply this going forward to our lives. This lesson number 2, what we can control and to avoid aversions and whatever.
Well, I think it just needs to really be a continual practice, just like everything. It's identifying. I think for me, anytime I hear or utter the word should, that needs to be my trigger to cause me to pause and go, oh, all right, you need to rethink this and really sit down and separate what is and what is not within your control. Like for me, for this particular exercise, I was having a lot of functional issues like Sierra, but I was also, getting a little bit frustrated with the output of, what other people might have been doing or not enough or not, deep enough. So it's like, listen, that's on me. To say that they should be doing what I do is unreasonable. And if I want to have an outcome similar to like what I do, then I need to better communicate what that outcome looks like, what the parameters are, but also be realistic. And does it fit within their skill set or their time or their ability, their space that they have? So that was for me, like when it came to that, but also being clear on deadlines and things. That was really, I was letting all of this build up in me, like they should just be doing X, when the reality is I never made it clear what X was or by Y time. So, and with the functional stuff, it's just getting better with recognizing that this is all new technology that I'm working with, and there's going to be a learning curve, but setting a time frame for myself as well. For if I found that I'm spending too much time on it, like we talked about last week, my frustrations of everything's taking so long, setting a time frame. And if I can't, either just taking a break or exploring an alternative option, just like Mrs. Levine, exploring a different option there to see, is there another way that I can solve this, be it myself or by asking for help? But I think the trigger for me is the should. Anytime I hear it, supposed to, should, those are the cues for me to check myself.
Yeah, because that's kind of get into the, like, what is it that I want versus what am I feeling obligated about, whether it's somebody else's expectation or what you feel like you should be doing. It's all about that expectation and that ego is that when we think what people think of us, we get so wrapped up in our head, right? And that's where so much of the shoulds come from is, I'm thinking about how this person is perceiving what I'm saying or what they think about me. Do they like me? Do they not like me? We should be connected. They should understand what I'm saying. And you get really mixed up in the, where do you want to come from versus where do you think other people want you to be? So that's a trigger word for you, Amy, is when you hear yourself saying should, that's a trigger to pay attention.
Yep. And you need those cues. You need those little reminders, because if not, you're just gonna keep repeating and not remember. Because our memories aren't that great. So it's not like I'm gonna be like, oh, now let me go back. I remember there was this lesson. But if I have that trigger word, that'll help me.
Well, it's about paying attention to the trigger words, right? That's the important part of how you communicate with yourself. And Sarah, I think, can back me up on this, is that's how you improve your speech. If you say too many times, the first part in stopping saying is to catch yourself saying so that it becomes apparent in your head. So you'll pay attention to the or the or the like or the right, whatever word you use too many times, which we all have those words. The first step is paying attention to them and recognizing those words so that you hear it and you go, oh, I said it again. And then you realize, wow, I do say that word a lot.
Mm-hmm. So how about you, Rob? What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to not worry about other people's reactions, knowing I cannot control that. What I'm going to worry about is whatever it is I'm going to say. So if I have to take a stand, for example, on my radio show, am I communicating this as clearly as possible? And am I explaining the why I've arrived at this conclusion and why I'm taking this stand? so that if I take the emotion out of my stand, for example, and I explain myself clearly, other people might pause and listen. But again, I can't control that. All I can control is how I deliver my message. And that's tuning into me and fully tuning into me. So again, I'll use the term static, right? Radio term. What I need to do is get the static out of my message, because when it's said clearly, it's more effective as a means of communication, number one. And instead of worrying about, well, this person might react this way, this person react, it takes the energy out of the clarity that I can present. So I just have to focus on the message completely rather than the static, if you will. Because if I'm focused on the static, which is everybody else, I won't be completely tuned in and completely focused on how I'm trying to deliver the message, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I would say also the language you use.
Well, that's part of it, right? Yes, exactly.
Using more objective language, avoiding things like, well, obviously, or clearly.
Or to try to be condescending. My opinion is right. It's just an opinion. Whether it's right or wrong I'm sure we'll get to this at some point in our Stoic book. Whether you're right or wrong, what does that mean? What does that mean to you as an individual? Do you get significance out of being right?
Yeah. How about you, Sarah? I think you were going to say something.
Ultimately, it's coming to peace with the fact that some people are not like you. Some people are going to not respect you. Some people are not going to vibe with your vibe, and being okay with it, because maybe those just aren't your people, or maybe those people aren't ready to hear your message yet. But you're not responsible for that. You're only responsible for giving your message in the best way that you can today. That's it.
Well, think about Dr. Martin Luther King, for example. He communicated a beautiful message to the entire world and ended up changing the world, but it wasn't well received by everyone. As eloquent as he was, as inspirational as he was, as correct as he was, it didn't matter to everybody. It wasn't like everybody bought in. That's why so many people showed up to the mall in 1963 to listen to the I Have a Dream speech. It wasn't, if it was universally received right from the get-go, it would have been like, all right, cool, we're moving on. But obviously it was not. So if you're in a situation as far as your speech goes, your speaking goes, remember that, and remember the stakes that he was up against in order to deliver that message, and the number of death threats that he received on a weekly basis, because that's the message he carried. And all it was a message of equality. So imagine if you have to deliver, a message that isn't equality, how much resistance you're going to get anyways. So if you just accept that no matter what you say, what position you have, there's going to be a level of resistance, whether you're in the office place, whether it's in your home, whether you have to talk to your kids about something difficult, there's going to be a level of resistance, and you can't control that. You just have to control your message.
I think it all just comes down to, so long as whatever you're doing, whether it's what you're saying, an activity that you're performing in, some sort of event or goal that you're striving towards, so long as you're doing it authentically and compassionately, right, virtuously, then, the outcome is going to be what it is. But as long as you're doing it from that virtuous place, then I think that in the end, whatever the stakes are, whether you win or lose, you technically will always win, at least from your individual character. Yeah.
True.
All right.
Good lesson.
Week 2 in the books. Good job, everybody. I can only imagine what the next ones have in store for us. I think week 3 is about taking an outside view. So we'll explore that one more next week.
Yeah. Beautiful. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, guys.